Okay, friends. Welcome to this lecture on Rousseau, Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Another social contractualist, renowned philosopher, and a prolific writer. So we are going to refer Rousseau, chapter 14 by David Boucher for this lecture, for today's lecture. We are referring David Boucher, Rousseau. This file is taken from Political Thinkers from Socrates to the present, written jointly by, not written, edited jointly by David Boucher and Paul Kelly. And David Boucher himself has contributed to this chapter on Rousseau. And friends, this is a very small file, reading file with 18 page. And this reading file, in the beginning, tell you that if you have come across that reading file, you would realize that Rousseau was an exponent of Republican tradition, that he was so much interested in the ancient Greco-Roman republic traditions, in which government was what the people think. So Rousseau somehow wished the modern society should be something like the ancient Roman republic. So his writings reflected his commitment to this republicanism. Throughout his philosophy, we will find out Rousseau's commitment, Rousseau's heart was with the republicanism. And like the method we adopted to study all other philosophers, which we have discussed in this lecture, we have to begin by a reference to the personal life of the philosopher. So here, David Boucher too, before making a commentary on Rousseau's political philosophy, directly enter into the personal life of, or the biography of Rousseau. So the biography or the personal life of the philosopher and the philosophy are not different things. The philosophy is molded through their personal life. So personal life is a window to the philosophy. That's why all the writers used to give a sketch of personal life. So friends, David Boucher also tries to tell you the personal life of Rousseau in this writing. So for which he has dedicated I think 2 to 3 pages to mention the biography of Jean-Jacques Rousseau. So certainly his biography is a key to Rousseau's political philosophy, as I told you a while ago. So Rousseau was born in Geneva, Switzerland. He was a Swiss-born French political philosopher. He was born in Geneva, 1712. So he was certainly a product of 18th century. Hobbes was a product of 16th century. Locke was a product of 17th century. And Jean-Jacques Rousseau was a product of 18th century. And he was born to a family of middle-class connections. Boucher tell you that he was born to a family of middle-class connections. And friends, at a personal level, Boucher tell you that if you look at the personal life of Rousseau, it seems less attractive. Rousseau was different from all other philosophers we have studied this far, because his life, personal life, was unattractive. Be it the life of Hobbes or Locke or Machiavelli or any other previous philosophers, friends, you will see that their personal life is somehow distinct. But when it comes to Rousseau's life, it was, from the modern standards, we will feel that it was anarchic. And Boucher himself tell you that Rousseau thought himself like no other person. He was not like others. And he exhibited tendencies towards hypochondria and paranoia. He exhibited tendencies like hypochondria and paranoia. Rousseau was always thinking of an illness which never existed. Rousseau was always thinking about an illness which never existed. And he always thought that he has so many enemies. So Rousseau was such a unstable state of mind. And some writers even comment that Rousseau was a demonic mind, which David Boucher has quoted in this biography section of Rousseau, that Rousseau was portrayed as a demonic mind by so many famous writers of his generation. For example, David Hume. He was a friend, David Hume. David Hume liked Rousseau very much, but later David Hume was subjected to character assassination by Rousseau. So later David Hume himself said that Rousseau is a pernicious and dangerous man who lies like the devil. Look at the words he used against Rousseau. So French philosopher Denis Diderot, they were earlier friends, but later Denis Diderot felt uneasy with Rousseau's company, and he was saying that Diderot was saying that Rousseau as a soul capable of persuading Diderot of the existence of devils and evils, devils and hell. So he was comparing Rousseau with hell or devil. Casanova, an Italian adventurer and author, he was in the beginning appreciative of Rousseau. Casanova was a very famous writer, and his book about European life was a major source for understanding life in the European part of the world in the 18th century. So such a very prolific and influential writer, Casanova, an Italian adventurer also. He was appreciative of Rousseau's reasoning, his intelligence. But later he was saying that Rousseau was impolite and unpleasant. So that's why, friends, David Boucher was saying that in the beginning, in the beginning of this writing, he was saying that Rousseau was portrayed as a demonic mind by so many contemporaries of Rousseau's generation. And friends, it's of course true that Rousseau was a true Renaissance man. He was a liberated man. He was not dogmatic. He was not a status quoist. He was not superstitious. He put his talents to a variety of different activities. He was not simply a philosopher who stood somewhere like Socrates, listening nothing, giving care to nothing, and thinking about so many abstract things. No, Rousseau was not like this. Rousseau was very organic man, unlike Socrates. And Rousseau put his energy on so many things, like David Boucher tell you that Rousseau was a novelist. He wrote an epistola, epistolary novel, that is, novel written in the form of love letters, called Novelle Heloise, which represent his political writings. And he wrote Emily, a treatise on education. Then he wrote Social Contract, which contained his idea of social contract, natural rights, natural law, general will. So Rousseau, even though most famous was for his political philosophy, he was also well respected as a composer of operas, and he compiled a scholarly and authoritative dictionary of music. And during his time in Turin, that is an Italian city, Turin, as a secretary to the French ambassador in Venice, Rousseau developed a passion for Italian music. And Rousseau's opera, that is The Village Soothsayer, was Italian in style. That, friends, David Boucher is telling you that you should not confine Rousseau just to political philosophy, unlike other philosophers. Most other philosophers are just philosophers. They were engaging, they were intellectually engaged with abstract ideas, but Rousseau wasn't like that. He was interested in so many things. He was more a Platonic, like Plato, who trained philosopher kings in almost all aspects of life, not simply about abstract ideas, gymnastics, music, space science, and logic, and other things, even natural science. Just like that, Rousseau was versatile. He was something like Platonic. And friends, Rousseau converted to Catholicism in 1728. He converted to Catholicism in 1728. And he found refuge with a fellow convert and another convert. And he found a refuge with that convert. That was a Swiss baroness, a Swiss woman, a baroness, named Madame de Warens. And Madame de Warens was 12 years elder to him. That relationship, their friendship is very famous because Madame de Warens inspired Rousseau towards learning. And friends, it was his company with Madame de Warens that created, in a sense, the Rousseau the philosopher. So he lived with Madame de Warens between 1729 and 1742. And Boucher says that initially Rousseau lived with Madame de Warens as a guest of honor in her house. And later, they became lovers. She was 12 years elder to him. And he lovingly called Madame de Warens as Mamam, M-A-M-A-M, Mamam. And she called Rousseau as Petit, P-E-T-I-T. So, the relationship was somehow interesting in the sense that when the relationship blossomed, and once Rousseau was invited to her bed, she was already intimate with another man 6 years older than Rousseau. That person was 6 years older than Rousseau. And that person was a literary assistant of Madame de Warens. And that person Rousseau loved so much and respected so much. Rousseau loved that person, and that person was a literary assistant of Madame de Warens. And when Rousseau was invited to sleep with his protector, that is Madame de Warens, and also the lover of a friend, That is, Madame de Warens was also the lover of Rousseau's friend. Rousseau sensed some kind of guilt feeling. He was feeling that incest, that he was committing incest, because Madame de Warens was the lover of his friend. That friend Rousseau loved so much and respected so much. And also, Madame de Warens was 12 years elder and also his protector. But she invited him to her bed. But friends, that relationship, that was a relationship, and in French society, the word used for that kind of relationship is ménage de trios. Menage, sometimes it is pronounced as ménage de trios. That means a domestic arrangement in a house with 3 people sharing romantic sexual relationship with each other. And in ancient Roman society, such a relationship is called orgies. This relationship in ancient society, Roman societies, it is called orgies. And friends, Rousseau was feeling incest, and he was trying to escape from such kind of company. And in 1842, he escaped. We can't say escape, but he was disinterested, or he was feeling guilty. So he moved to Paris from Geneva, where he met some of the leading philosophers of the day, such as Denis Diderot, Jean Le Rond, Albert, and with Albert, Rousseau jointly edited an encyclopedia. So friends, Rousseau fathered 5 children with a woman. He had 5 children with a woman called Thérèse Le Vasseur. She was a maid whom he met in a hotel in Paris town, in Paris city, and he married her at the age of 56. And interestingly, he committed all the children to the founding home shortly after birth. That he abandoned all the children, and that was also a second, what may be called, guilt feeling in Rousseau. That he had a guilt feeling in his relationship with Madame de Warens. Second, that he had a guilt feeling because he had abandoned all his 5 children he had with Thérèse Le Vasseur. But those days, that the time he abandoned his children, Rousseau justified it through philosophy, that he was financially unfit to be a father, so that he abandoned all the children, and found that even if I am not able to bring up my children, society will bring up. That's why he left them in a founding home. So, but in a sense, it added a troubled conscience to Rousseau. So Rousseau's personal life is closely related to his philosophy, friends, that he was an anarchic. He was against all the established norms, against all the established way in which society was constructed, against all the norms in which human relationships are constructed. He was against all these, usual things. So his life was his philosophy. And he was saying that he became, what he was, is to recapture his lost innocence. He says that he lost his innocence, that he had, what may be called some kind of paranoia, that he felt that he had an enemy but which never existed. He felt that he had an illness but which never existed. So he had he had some kind of mental instability. So he always thought that he lost his innocence, his childhood, and he wanted to recover that through all these anarchic activities. But friends, he himself indulged in excessive sensuous pleasures. He was more sensual. But at the age of 37, he felt guilty, and he experienced the remorse for all what he did at the age of 37. So he renounced his former life at the age of 37, just like Gandhi practiced, celibacy in 1906. That year, Gandhi renounced all material, pleasure in life. Rousseau also, attained some kind of, spiritual life, and he experienced remorse, and he renounced his former life. But this coincided with another very important event in his life, that he felt remorse, and his remorse was coincided with another very important event in his life. That was an essay competition. An essay competition called the John Prize. And this essay competition, he applied for that essay competition, and the title of the competition was very, that is a famous essay competition, and the title was very interesting: whether arts and science had led to an improvement in people's morals. That was an essay competition: whether arts and science has led to an improvement in people's morals. And friends, in that essay competition, Rousseau won the first prize, and because of that prize, Rousseau attained some fame in Switzerland, in Geneva, and Paris. And in this essay, the John Prize, Rousseau argued that the progress that man achieved through science and arts are just illusion. Science and arts are causing a ruin in mankind. Science ruined mankind. Art ruined mankind. Beauty ruined mankind, Rousseau argued. And Rousseau argued culture, the invention of culture, done more damages to mankind. And Rousseau argued only simple societies, small societies, where people lived Spartan existence, will become virtuous. So that's why, that republican tradition, that Rousseau was more fascinated by ancient Roman republics, so Greek city-states. And Rousseau argued that simple life is good, and simple Spartan existence is good, where virtue flourish. And more sophisticated your culture is, more corrupt you are. That when you have more sense of, liberty consciousness, more sense of right, more sense of science, more sense of human standards, more sense of spirituality, all these things, when you become more and more sophisticated in these norms, you will become more corrupt. That was Rousseau's argument. And Rousseau uses Plato as evidence in support of his argument, that he wanted to censor all the writers and poets and artistic expression in the Republic. That Plato argued that you should censor all the writers, all the poets, all the novelists and artists. Even they should be exiled from ideal polis. So Plato argued that you should exile writers, artists, and poets from the Republic. You should not give any place to these people. That is what Plato argued. And Rousseau somehow argued same thing, because he believed that these are people who exalt culture, exalt liberty, exalt right, exalt science, art, and these people are spoiling. These people, these writers, artists, etc., are spoiling, and corrupting mankind. And friends, in 1750s, Rousseau moved away from Catholicism. That I have told you that Rousseau became a Catholic in 1728 under the influence of Madame de Warens. But in 1750s, Rousseau moved away from Catholicism and proudly adopted the title, the citizen of Geneva. And Rousseau argued that Theaters may be appropriate for monarchies. That is, drama theaters may be appropriate for monarchies. Free entertainment such as games, athletics, dances, and concerts were much more republican. That people can enjoy that. But theater may be interesting to rulers and monarchies. Games like, gladiator games, Spartacus, you remember, gladiator games, athletics, ancient Olympics, Greek Olympics, athletics, dances, and concerts will be more interesting to the people. So you can create a polis, a republican tradition. So with the publication of Emily and the Social Contract, Rousseau became popular, but also became more denounced, and ruling class began to suspect Rousseau's writing, and he was expelled from France and Geneva for his unorthodox and heretical views on religion, that he was saying something against Christianity. And from ever since 1762, he was leading a nomadic life because he was expelled from Geneva and Paris, so he didn't get a space in Europe. So for the reason that he was criticizing Christianity, ever since 1762, he had a nomadic life. So he died in 1778. So that's a personal life and also the intellectual life of Rousseau. You can come through from the writings of David Boucher, and his famous books are Discourse on the Science and Arts. That was that book he developed from that essay competition. Discourse on the Science and Arts. Discourse on the Origin of Inequality. That is a very famous book. Discourse on the Origin of Inequality. Then Discourse on Political Economy. And his most famous book, The Social Contract. Other books are also very famous, but from the political science students' points of view, a political philosophy students' points of view, The Social Contract is important book. Then Emily, The Government of Poland, then the Confessions of Jean-Jacques Rousseau. So he confessed for all the guilty things he had done. He later said, "Oh, my sin." So these are some of the key texts, and in this reading file, David Boucher tell you some key ideas that he is going to talk in this reading file, such as the dependence, idea of dependence, state of nature, social contract, general will, lawgiver, the idea of lawgiver, civil religion, for which Rousseau was expelled from France and Switzerland. Civil religion, then censorial tribunal. So these are some of the ideas you will find explanation in this writing. And friends, Rousseau saw that human world is a product of human intelligence. Human world is a product of human intelligence. The evils that we see around us are our own creation. Rousseau was arguing that the evils that you see around you is because it is your own creation. We can, of course, remove all these evils from the world if you apply your will. If you apply your intelligence, we can wipe out all the ills from the world. So that means, unlike Machiavelli, unlike Thomas Hobbes, Rousseau was pessimist. Keep in mind that point. That point is very important when you study, when you read Rousseau, because Hobbes was pessimistic about human nature. Machiavelli was pessimistic about human nature. But friends, when it comes to Rousseau, he was feeling that humans, though there are so many ills created by humans alone can wipe out you know, do away with all the ills in human society by his own will. So that way Rousseau was a optimist, not a pessimist. So Rousseau had a faith in human capacity that, nature has given us certain capacity. And we have capability for self-redemption. We have capability for self-redemption. That is, Rousseau himself had committed incest. Rousseau himself had committed some type of orgies, which he was inspired from ancient Roman Republic. And at the age of 37, he renounced his former life and went to some kind of a rational life, migrated to a rational life. So Rousseau was saying that, of course, we all commit errors, we all commit ills, we all commit, evils. But at some point of time, we can recover from all these things. That he was referring to that idea by looking into himself or his own life. That he renounced his former life at the age of 37. And he abandoned all his children, but later in his book Confessions, he confessed that I was guilty. He confessed. So that way, Rousseau was saying that, of course, we commit evils, but one day we will realize that we were wrong. So we have capacity for self-redemption. That is called self-redemption. So we have capacity for self-redemption. Right? Jesus Christ, Christians attained redemption through Jesus. Jesus, swallowed all the ills of man. But when it comes to Rousseau says that we can self-redempt all the evils of our society. So how it is possible? It is possible through creating a just state. You create a state on ethical principle. But friends, by proposing this sort of an argument, friends, Rousseau was abstract. Rousseau was very abstract. So his premises were not like that of Hobbes, nor like that of Locke. So he was saying that we are all evil, but we can self-redempt it. How? We can self-redempt our evils through creating a state on ethical principle. So proposing this argument, Rousseau put forward immense possibilities for extreme interpretation. So many writers have interpreted this idea from so many angles. So we will feel that Rousseau is ambiguous. It's very difficult to understand Rousseau by saying this kind of an argument. So the point is, who actually is Rousseau? Who actually is Rousseau? Is he a totalitarian? Is he a liberal thinker? Or is he a Republican thinker? So friends, it's a very important question that David Boucher put forward before you, present before you, and you should read more and more about whether Rousseau was a Republican or a totalitarian or a liberal thinker. It's very difficult to categorize Rousseau. If you go to Hobbes, you can say that Hobbes was the exponent of absolute state and somehow a liberal. When it comes to John Locke, you can without doubt say that John Locke was a liberal. But when it comes to Rousseau, it's very difficult whether whether he is a totalitarian or a liberal thinker or a what may be called a Republican thinker. It's very difficult because some writers argue that Rousseau was responsible for the creation of Hitler, because his sense of an ideal polity, a totalitarian polity, an abstract polity, inspired later fascist ideas in Germany and Italy. So, like Hegel, who glorified state, Rousseau also glorified the idea of state in 18th century. So he was considerably responsible for the ills of 20th century. That between the world wars, you have seen two demonic ideas, fascism and Nazism. And some writers argue that Rousseau was responsible for the creation of such, abstract ideas resulting in the, mass killing of people. in the name of ideology. So he is said to give rise to the Hitler phenomenon in European history. Rousseau was held responsible. For example, L.G. Crocker, who studied Rousseau from a psycho-historical approach by analyzing Rousseau's psychology and also placing Rousseau in a historical perspective, interpreted that Rousseau was an authoritarian. And his writings as authoritarian character trait. That was one interpretation on Rousseau. Robespierre is accused for implementing the total collectivist state of the social contract of Rousseau, based on the idea of virtue patriotism. So virtue patriotism was an idea of Rousseau, that he argued for the Spartan existence, simple living of Spartan existence. So this inspired Robespierre for implementing a total collectivist state. So Rousseau was also responsible for creation of Robespierre. And J.L. Talman, another writer, was also an intellectual opponent of Rousseau, argued that Rousseau is a case for totalitarian ideology. And he argued that Rousseau was tormented by paranoia, mass conflicting, emotions and psychological undercurrents. These all created some kind of what may be called totalitarian personality, a totalitarian social system through the writings of Rousseau. So J.L. Talman says that Rousseau is a typical case of strange combination of psychological ill-adjustment and totalitarian ideology. So he was a staunch critic of Rousseau. He was despising Rousseau for saying his ideologies, which resulted in totalitarian political system. So many writers criticize Rousseau, and also so many other writers were somehow appreciative of Rousseau. For example, G.A. Pollock, in his Machiavellian Moments, says that Rousseau's writings was the light of republicanism. So that way, friends, it's very difficult to categorize Rousseau, whether Rousseau was a liberal, whether Rousseau was a totalitarian, whether Rousseau was a republican. So many writers have interpreted Rousseau in different way. That is, the reason is that his argument that, as I told you a short while ago, Rousseau put forward the idea that man was, despite the fact that man is evil, he is capable of self-redemption, and it is possible for self-redemption by creating a state on ethical principle. But this was somehow an abstract argument which was subjected to so many interpretations. That's why you can say Rousseau was a liberal, Rousseau was a totalitarian, Rousseau was an authoritarian. It's very, Rousseau is subjected to plenty of interpretations. And friends, Boucher tell you about the state of nature in Rousseau. What is state of nature in Rousseau? So these are not extensive writings on Rousseau, simple references only. Boucher makes simple references to Rousseau. And Rousseau rejected Samuel von Pufendorf's idea that men are naturally social. That was another very important writer of the day, of his generation, Samuel von Pufendorf. And Pufendorf argued that men are naturally social, just like Plato said, men are social. And Rousseau also rejected Hobbes' idea that men are self-seeking, competitive by nature. Men are self-preserving, competitive, inward-looking creatures. No, Rousseau also rejected that idea. So he rejected both the ideas. What is that? On the one side, an argument that men are good, and on the other side, Hobbes-like argument that men are evil. So these two arguments he rejected. So he was neither with the idea that man is good, he was nor with the idea that man is evil. So he rejected Hobbes and he rejected Pufendorf. And he also denies that history has brought progress in human condition. No. He was also rejecting that idea. So Rousseau is very interesting, and Rousseau is also very, what may be called contradicting, friends. Rousseau is also very contradicting because, on the one side he says that man is able to self-redemption, and on the other side he was saying that, you just look at his argument that we all believe that day by day human society is progressing. In the ancient society, if you look at Indian history, we will see that there were Varna system and untouchability and so many evils. But as days passed, our society progressed. We got notions of right, liberty, justice, and so human society progressed. When we look at the European history, we will see that in the ancient world there were slave trade. In the ancient world, women had no voting rights. In the ancient world, elderly people, in the ancient city state, only the elders will get voting rights, and there were slaves, and there were gladiatorial practices, and there were orgies in the ancient Roman republics. So from that point of time in history, when we look towards the future, of course, friends, now things are somewhat better. That is what we believe. But when we refer to Rousseau will tell you that history never progressed, and history never improved man's condition. And Rousseau began to explore into the human condition by referring to an isolated individual in the state of nature. Friends, by the time the man was born, and before man created a political institution, that is, you refer to what may be called Adam and Eve. In the initial stage, before man invented social institutions, Rousseau says that man was isolated creature. Man was isolated from all other individuals. And the state of nature in Rousseau is an idea against the present condition of society. Rousseau presents state of nature to understand what is the present situation in our society. And Rousseau started criticizing Hobbes. And Rousseau's characterization of state of nature somehow has similarities with that of Thomas Hobbes. Though he criticized Thomas Hobbes, his state of nature, Rousseau's state of nature, has similarity with Hobbes and Hobbesian state of nature. For Rousseau, the state of nature is neither social nor moral. So Hobbes says state of nature was asocial. State of nature was a state of license. So people were inward looking, and there were no sociality among men. That was Hobbes saying. And Locke was different. And Rousseau was saying that state of nature was neither social nor moral. Nature gives us no sanction for creating a political society. Nature didn't want us to create a political society. There is no such scheme of things in the nature. Nature doesn't want man to create a political society. Nature doesn't want any animal to create a political society. Look at other animal kingdom. Is there an idea of a political order? You have so many animal species. The lion, the dogs. So you look at the animal kingdom. There is no political society that we say. There may be herd community, the animal herd. But there is no political authority in any other animal species. So just like that, nature didn't want man to create a political authority. That is not in the nature of man. And political society is a condition in which one man will get right to rule over another man. That's a bad idea. That's a wrong idea, because nature doesn't want one man to rule over another man. You just look at other animals. Is there any other animal other than man, a human animal, who can be spotted to have right over another species member? No. Whether a cat rule over another cat, whether a wolf rule over another wolf, whether an ant rule over another ant, whether a bee rule over another bee. No. There is no such thing in the animal world. So humans are also another animal in the nature. And there is no such idea. So political authority is a wrong idea. That is what Rousseau says. Because there is no justice nor injustice in the nature. Men are portrayed as solitary and self-sufficient. So Rousseau says, in the state of nature, before you created political authority, you were all solitary and self-sufficient. And Rousseau says, there were two principles that existed prior to the development of political authority. Prior to the development of political authority in human society, there are two principles that steered man's life. What is that? One is self-preservation. Other one is sympathy or pity. Friends, before we develop political authority, before we develop human reason, before we develop human intelligence, we had two principles that steered human behavior. What are them? Rousseau says one is self-preservation. So by arguing self-preservation motivated man's behavior in the state of nature before you created a political society, what motivated you is self-preservation. So with that point, he was sharing some kind of solidarity with Thomas Hobbes. That Thomas Hobbes said in the state of nature, man was motivated by the idea of self-preservation. So he was looking into himself and he was bothered about his own life. From that point, Rousseau was sharing solidarity with Thomas Hobbes. So first principle shared with Thomas Hobbes. Second is sympathy or pity. That is, the state of nature is a social condition. It is an asocial condition. Humans pursue their own interest. Humans pursue their own interest and have a capacity for self-preservation. But you have no natural right to do everything. It is pity, that is prior to all reflections, that prior to you develop any intelligence or reason, that pity, the notion of sympathy shaped human behavior. So pity is what in the state of nature takes the place of law. There is no such thing as law, natural law. That is what Thomas Hobbes said, that is what Locke said. But unlike what Locke and Hobbes, Rousseau was saying that there is no such thing as natural law. But what is there? There is pity, notion of sympathy or pity, and that is natural law. Pity is the source from which all our virtues flow. Pity is the source upon which all our virtues flow. That is, friends, you like ice cream, you like chocolate, you like car, you like mobile. You just know that. You just know that I like all these things. And friends, are you aware of whether your liking is just or wrong? You like that person, you like that flower, you like that road, you like that cloth, you like that mobile. Okay, and you like all those things. And friends, we don't know in the state of nature whether my liking is right thing or wrong thing, because we don't have any such notion. We don't have such a notion. And such notions were later created. When you created political authority, when you developed reason, when you developed intelligence, when you developed morality, you began to think in terms of whether my actions or whether my likings are good thing or bad thing. Before that, in the state of nature, in the original state of nature, men had any idea of sense of good or bad. And pity was natural law. That we had sympathy and we had pity. And we had only liking. And Rousseau says that is amor di soi. And once you created political authority, once you invented social intelligence, once you invented rationality, the place of amor di proper was replaced by amor proper. The place of amor di soi was replaced by amor proper. That is selfish interest. Amor di soi is self-love, that we like ice cream, we like chocolate, we like everything that we like, and we only know that we like it. No other things. We don't know whether it is whether you are liking. So you like that person, you don't know whether I can like that person or I cannot like that person. We don't know. So you like someone. We don't know what he is or what she is, but we simply like that person. And I don't know whether my liking is right thing or a bad thing. So for example, you are married, and as a married person, you like another person. And the point is that from a social point of view, from modern intelligence, a married person liking another person is a wrong thing from the modern worldview, modern moral standards. But in the state of nature, it doesn't matter, friends, whether you like or not. The point is that whether like is good or wrong, we don't know. We just like that, and we don't know. We don't have any sense of moral things, or we don't have any sense of immoral things, and that is called pity or sympathy. And Rousseau says that is amor di soi, and this amor di soi was replaced by amor proper when you created society. Once you created society, you created notions of morals, you created notions of evils, you created notions of immorals, you created notions of good thing and bad thing, moral thing and immoral thing, right and wrong, false and true, all these notions, rightness, fairness, unfairness, you create all these things later. Once you developed reason, once you developed intelligence, once you created political society, all notions were created. So from that point of time, you started to behave in terms of what other people would think about me when I do a particular act. From that point of time, clear? From that point of time, people began to think in terms of not your amor di soi, but amor proper. That my liking of something, whether my action create some wrong impression in society or some good impression in society. So you began to behave in terms of that notions. Once you created intelligence, and once you created notions of science, once you created notions of art. But in the original society, where there were no political society, where there were no reason, in that society, friends, we don't have any sense of wrongness or rightness. We were all just natural. Friends, this idea later created what may be called a romanticism, that go to nature, engage in all the things that you like, no morality, no rightness, no wrongness. That was a movement in the 1850, in the 19th century, something like that. That time in Europe, there was a movement called romanticism that was inspired by Rousseau's writing, that you go back to nature. In the nature, there is no sense of rightness or goodness. You like what you like, and do not bother about whether your actions create any wrong impression or right impression in society. You just do what you like to do. So this is Rousseau's state of nature, friends. And Rousseau says that in the state of nature, man was a noble savage, isolated, innocent, sympathetic being. Man was a noble savage, isolated, relatively content. You were content also, like all other animals. You just look at the tiger population or the wolf population. They were all content. When they get their food, they are content. They are concerned only with their food and procreative function. They are not bothered about any other things, whether tomorrow rain comes or tomorrow my wound comes, whether tomorrow my granddaughter will come and say something to me. We are not bothered about anything in those times. So we were somehow we were content with what we were doing. So we were innocent, we were sympathetic. And Rousseau says that is characterized by amor di soi or self-love. And we lose self-love once you create society, right? And when you create a new society, and the role of amor di soi is replaced by amor proper, and amor proper is selfish love. Selfish love. And self-love is amor di soi. And self-love and selfish love are two different terms in Rousseau. Self-love is amor di soi, and selfish love is amor proper. And amor proper is when you create a new society, and amor di soi is when you were in the original society. That is in the nature. So this is what, friends, this writer tell you about. And Rousseau also talks about what may be called source of inequality, which this writer, talks a little bit, some few references in this writing. And also this writer makes reference to natural law and natural rights. Then this writer, David Boucher, also makes a reference to plastic man, the notion of plastic man. Rousseau's man is a plastic man. Modern man is a plastic man. That Rousseau was inventor of so many political lexicons. So he used, you can refer to Rousseau's plastic man. So then finally, David Boucher talks about general will and democracy. General will and democracy. Then the notion of lawgiver, religion, and censorship in this writing. Friends, you may read it. So for the shortage of time, we are not in a position to finish the content of this reading file. Friends, now the floor is open for discussion. We can have discussion, friends.